In a shocking showdown that has left fans reeling, Kid Rock and Ice Cube confront Diddy in a heated face-off that's lighting up the internet. With accusations of lies and betrayal swirling, this is a moment of raw honesty and explosive revelations. What really went down behind closed doors? Let's dive in and uncover the drama as it unfolds. The velvet curtains of the VIP lounge were drawn tight, shrouding the room in a thick darkness that seemed to pulse with secrecy. Only the dim glow of a flickering chandelier overhead offered any light, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. The heavy scent of expensive cigars and top-shelf bourbon hung in the air, a potent reminder of the kind of deals usually struck in places like this. It was here, in this luxurious but stifling room, that Kid Rock and Ice Cube found themselves face-to-face with Diddy. No one knew exactly who had set up this clandestine meeting. Whispers suggested it was a mutual acquaintance, someone with ties deep enough to bring these three heavyweights of the music world together in one place. But the identity of this mystery broker was just another secret in a room already packed to the ceiling with them. All that was certain was that the stakes were high, and each man had come armed with more than just words. Kid Rock sat slouched in a worn leather chair, his signature hat tilted low over his eyes. His fingers drummed out a restless rhythm on the table in front of him. Ice Cube, ever the stoic observer, leaned back with his arms crossed, his eyes sharp and unwavering. Diddy, however, was the picture of cool composure, clad in an impeccably tailored suit and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The room was thick with tension, like a charged wire ready to snap. No music played here, only the sound of ice clinking in glasses and the low murmur of voices that threatened to boil over at any moment. Even the staff seemed to sense the brewing storm. Waiters moved with deliberate caution, eyes flicking nervously from one man to the other as they poured drinks and quickly disappeared. Early whispers had hinted at the reason for this sudden and secret gathering, old wounds that had never fully healed, and new betrayals that had only deepened the scars. Past deals gone sour, money that had changed hands under shady circumstances, and a sense of respect that had been eroded over the years like a river cutting through stone. Each man carried his own version of the truth, and tonight, those truths were about to clash head-on. Diddy was the first to break the silence. He leaned forward, elbows resting on the polished mahogany table. "Look, fellas," he began, his voice smooth as silk, "we're all here for a reason. Let's not waste time dancing around it." Kid Rock's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. "Cut the crap, Diddy," he said, his voice low but laced with anger. "You know exactly why we're here. You've been playing both sides for too long." Ice Cube shifted in his seat but didn't speak. His expression was unreadable, but the tightening of his jaw said more than words ever could. He was here to listen, for now, but he was ready to jump in when the time was right. Diddy let out a soft laugh, but it sounded hollow in the confined space. "You boys always did love a good conspiracy," he said, though his eyes never lost that glint of calculation. "I'm here to clear the air, that's all. No drama, no games." But the tension in the room said otherwise. Kid Rock leaned in, his fingers still drumming on the table. "Don't act like you're the peacemaker, Diddy. We've seen your moves. You say one thing to our faces and another behind our backs. That stops tonight." A faint flicker of irritation crossed Diddy's face, but he quickly smothered it with a smile. "You think you know everything, kid. But trust me, you don't." Ice Cube's deep voice finally cut in, steady and calm. "We're not here for your half-truths," he said, his tone carrying the weight of every battle he'd fought in his long career. "We're here because too many people have been whispering the same things. Money gone missing, promises made and broken. We're done listening to your excuses." For a moment, the room fell into a heavy silence. The chandelier's glow seemed to dim, as if the very walls were holding their breath. Then Diddy leaned back, folding his hands in his lap. "All right," he said softly. "If that's how you want to play it, let's lay it all out." Outside the lounge, the night moved on without them, unaware of the storm brewing behind those thick velvet curtains. Inside, the three men sat like players at a high-stakes poker game, each holding cards close to their chest. The mysterious third party who had arranged this meeting was nowhere to be seen, but their presence lingered in the air like smoke. They had lit the fuse, and now all that remained was to watch the fireworks. Kid Rock's voice dropped even lower, barely more than a growl. "We're done with your lies, Diddy. This is your last chance to come clean. No more games, no more smoke and mirrors." Diddy didn't flinch, but there was a tightening around his eyes that gave him away. "You think you have it all figured out?" he asked, his voice tinged with amusement and challenge. "You're playing checkers, And I'm playing chess. You don't even know half of what's really going on. Ice Cube's response was quiet but carried the weight of a sledgehammer. Then enlighten us. A slow smile spread across Diddy's face, but it never reached his eyes.
All right, he said. I'll tell you my side.
But once you hear it, there's no going back. The three men sat in that dimly lit room, each one a piece of the puzzle that was slowly being pieced together. The tension was almost unbearable, a current of electricity that threatened to spark into something explosive. Whatever was about to come out of this secret meeting, it was clear that nothing would be the same afterward.
The stage was set.
The players were ready. And as the minutes ticked by, one thing became painfully clear. This was just the beginning. The air in the lounge grew heavier with each passing second, as if the weight of what was about to happen was too much for the room to bear. Ice Cube shifted in his seat, his eyes narrowing as he fixed his gaze on Diddy. Kid Rock's fingers had stopped drumming and were now clenched in a white-knuckled grip around his glass. Even the faint crackle of the ice melting in their drinks seemed to echo in the sudden silence.
Diddy's smirk was gone.
He looked at each of them in turn, his expression calm but his shoulders held just a little too stiffly. "You boys sure you want to do this?" he asked, his voice a low challenge. "Because once we start, there's no going back."
Kid Rock leaned forward, his eyes blazing.
"We're way past that point, Diddy. This is it. No more lies, no more excuses. We want the truth. All of it." Ice Cube spoke up, his voice calm but carrying the weight of finality. "Let's be real, Diddy.
We know you've been playing us against each other.
We've seen the deals, the shifting loyalties. It stops now." Diddy shifted in his seat, his eyes flicking to the closed door of the lounge as if considering making a run for it.
But he was too smart for that, and too proud. He knew he had to face this head-on.
"You're making it sound like I'm the villain here," he said, his voice smooth and practiced. "Like I'm the one pulling all the strings."
Kid Rock snorted, shaking his head.
"You've been weaving this web for years, Diddy. Acting like you're everyone's friend while you're busy stacking chips for yourself." The accusation hung in the air like a blade. Ice Cube's jaw tightened. "We're done dancing around this," he said quietly. "Tell us why you really brought us here." Diddy let out a breath, his composure slipping for just a moment. "All right," he said finally. "You want the truth? Here it is." He leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table, eyes locked on them. "I've been doing what I've always done, protecting my interests, making sure I stay on top."
Kid Rock's laugh was bitter.
"At our expense."
Diddy's lips twitched.
"You think this game doesn't come with casualties? We're all in the same industry, chasing the same spotlight. You know what it takes to stay at the top." Ice Cube's eyes narrowed, his voice cold. "There's a difference between staying at the top and selling out your own people." Diddy's mouth opened, then closed again. For a moment, he seemed to struggle for words, the cracks in his smooth facade starting to show.
"I never meant to sell anyone out," he said finally. "But you know how this business works.
You either play the game or you get played."
Kid Rock slammed his glass down, the sound sharp in the stillness.
"That's your excuse? That you're just playing the game?" He leaned in, his voice a low growl. "We're not pawns on your board, Diddy. We're done with that." Ice Cube's voice was quiet, but the steel in it was unmistakable. "You think you're the only one who's had to make tough choices?
We've all fought to get where we are.
But we never stabbed each other in the back to get there."
Diddy's eyes flashed with a hint of anger.
"You think you know everything, Cube? You think you're so clean?" He leaned back, his smile returning but with a dangerous edge. "You don't know half of what goes on behind closed doors." Ice Cube didn't flinch. "Then tell us." For a moment, the only sound was the faint buzz of the chandelier overhead. Then Diddy's voice dropped to a near whisper. "There are deals you don't even know about. Contracts signed in back rooms, promises made and broken. I've done what I had to do to survive in this world."
Kid Rock's eyes narrowed.
"That's the difference, Diddy. We're not just surviving, we're standing up for what's right. And tonight, we're calling you out." The words seemed to hang in the air, electric and unspoken. Diddy's shoulders tensed, and for the first time, he looked unsure.
But then the mask slipped back into place. "You think you're better than me?" he asked, his voice low and challenging.
"You think you're the only ones with the right to speak the truth." Ice Cube's voice was calm, almost gentle. "We're not here to prove we're better. We're here to stop the lies. To end the games." Diddy's gaze flicked from Ice Cube to Kid Rock and back again. His mouth opened as if to speak, but then he closed it, swallowing whatever retort had formed.
The silence that followed was deafening.
Then Kid Rock spoke, his voice low and steady. "We're giving you one last chance, Diddy.
Come clean, everything.
No more smoke and mirrors." Diddy's shoulders slumped, just a fraction. "You want the whole story," he said, his voice quiet. "You're not gonna like it." Ice Cube's eyes were cold as ice. "We're ready." And with that, the tension in the room crackled like a live wire.
Whatever was about to be said would change everything.
In that dimly lit VIP lounge, three men sat locked in a battle of words and wills, the weight of years of secrets and lies pressing down on them. Outside, the world kept turning. But in here, in this moment, everything had stopped. The confrontation was far from over. But one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The low-lit room seemed to shrink with every word that was spoken, the air charged with the weight of history and the ghosts of past betrayals. Kid Rock leaned forward, his fingers tapping a restless beat against the edge of the table. His eyes, usually masked behind sunglasses and bravado, were narrowed and sharp tonight. Ice Cube's calm composure was a stark contrast, his gaze steady and unwavering as he studied Diddy across the polished mahogany table. Diddy, however, was starting to look less like the confident mogul who had walked in earlier and more like a man cornered by his own machinations. He shifted in his seat, the forced calm in his expression betrayed by the slight clench of his jaw. "All right," Diddy said at last, his voice low but clear. "You want the truth?
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about the deals, the contracts, the money." Kid Rock's lip curled in a half-smirk, half-snarl. "Finally," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Glad you're done pretending there's nothing to tell." Diddy took a breath, his eyes flicking briefly to the closed door as if to make sure no one else was listening in. "It wasn't always like this," he began, his voice almost wistful. "There was a time when we were all on the same page, all chasing the same dream. But the game changed, and I had to change with it." Ice Cube's voice was quiet but unyielding. "You didn't just change, Diddy. You twisted the rules to suit yourself." A flicker of frustration crossed Diddy's face.
"You think it was that simple?
You think I wanted to cut you out?" His voice grew sharper, the mask slipping. "I did what I had to do to keep everything afloat. You have no idea the kind of pressure I was under."
Kid Rock snorted.
"Pressure? You call stealing from your own people pressure?" Diddy's eyes flashed, but he kept his tone level. "I didn't steal from anyone," he said tightly. "I made sure the business kept moving. Sometimes that meant making hard decisions." Ice Cube's brow furrowed, his voice low and cold.
"Decisions that left us out in the cold.
We trusted you, Diddy, and you turned that trust into leverage." For a moment, Diddy looked almost pained.
"You think I wanted it to be like that?
You think I didn't lose sleep over it?"
He shook his head. "You boys were family."
"But family doesn't always mean loyalty in this game. You know that as well as I do." Kid Rock leaned back, his expression hard. "Family doesn't screw each other over for a few more zeros on a check." Ice Cube's voice was like steel.
"Let's talk specifics."
"That contract in 2018, you promised us we'd all get a fair cut. But when the checks came, they were a fraction of what you took home." Diddy's lips thinned, and he didn't immediately respond.
The silence spoke volumes. Kid Rock pressed on, his voice rising. "And what about that tour?"
"You had your name plastered on every poster, but we were the ones carrying the weight. You walked away with double the money, and you know it." Diddy's shoulders slumped, just a little. "I was trying to keep the label alive," he said quietly. "You think those expenses paid for themselves? I had to cover costs." "Costs?"
Ice Cube cut in sharply. "Or your lifestyle?"
"Because I don't remember those private jets being part of the label's budget." Diddy's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked like a man who had run out of excuses. Kid Rock leaned in, his voice a low growl. "You always talk about the game, Diddy, but you forgot the most important rule, respect. You took ours and turned it into a weapon. And tonight, we're done letting that slide." Diddy's face hardened, but there was no more bravado in his eyes. Just a flicker of something like regret. "You boys want to believe I'm the villain here," he said softly. "But I've been fighting to keep us all relevant. To keep the doors open, even if it meant playing the bad guy." Ice Cube shook his head. "You didn't have to play the bad guy. You chose to." The silence that followed was suffocating. It wasn't just the three men in that room, it was every broken promise, every dollar gone missing, every time the phone rang with a sweet promise that turned out to be another trick. And then, Ice Cube reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen, and a video began to play. The low hum of a conversation, barely audible at first, filled the room. It was a recording, voices, deals being made. Diddy's voice clear and unmistakable as he cut deals in the shadows. Diddy's eyes widened as he listened to his own words being played back at him.
"Where did you get that?" he asked, his voice tight. Ice Cube didn't answer. The video said it all. Kid Rock's voice was cold as ice. "You think we're just guessing, Diddy? We've got the receipts.
Every lie, every backdoor deal, right here." Diddy closed his eyes for a moment, as if he could shut out the evidence. But when he opened them again, there was no more denying what they all knew.
The last of the illusions shattered.
The smooth-talking mogul act was gone, replaced by a man who finally saw that the game was up. "You think you've won," Diddy said softly. "But you don't know what you've started." Ice Cube's voice was calm, his eyes hard.
"We know exactly what we've started. And it ends tonight."
The three men sat in silence, the hum of the city outside muffled by the thick walls. There was no turning back now, no more hiding behind smiles and handshakes. The alleged lies had been laid bare.
And the truth was only just beginning to come out.
The air in the room had shifted from thick with tension to electric, charged with an energy that threatened to combust at any second. Kid Rock sat rigid, every muscle in his body tight as a coiled spring. Ice Cube, ever the stoic figure, held his gaze on Diddy with an intensity that felt almost physical. And Diddy, stripped of his smooth words and easy smile, looked every bit the cornered king facing a revolt. "What's next?" Kid Rock said, his voice low and dangerous. "You've been exposed, Diddy. No more dancing around it." Diddy's eyes darted between the two men, his jaw clenching. "You think you're the only ones who've been played," he shot back, his voice sharper now. "You think I'm the only one who's cut corners to stay ahead." Ice Cube's voice was calm, but the calm of a coming storm. "We're not here to hear about the rest of the industry, Diddy.
We're talking about you. About what you did."
For a moment, it looked like Diddy might back down, but then he straightened in his seat, his shoulders squared. "You think this is about money?" he asked, his voice rising. "You think this is just about a few deals gone wrong? You don't know half of what's been going on behind the scenes."
Kid Rock's laughter was harsh. "Save the speech. You've had plenty of chances to come clean.
But every time, you chose to keep lying." Diddy's face flushed, and for the first time, his composure cracked. "I built this empire," he said, his voice raw. "Every deal I made, every risk I took, it was for all of us. For this legacy." Ice Cube leaned forward, his voice quiet but edged with steel. "Don't talk to us about legacy when you're the one tearing it down." The argument had reached a fever pitch, voices raised, words tumbling over each other like waves crashing against the shore. Security outside the lounge door shifted uneasily, hands hovering near their radios, but the three men ignored them.
This was bigger than any threat of intervention.
Kid Rock's fist slammed down on the table, the sound echoing in the tight space. "You're done, Diddy.
You've been living off our backs for too long.
We're not letting you keep bleeding us dry."
Diddy shot back, his own voice rising to meet the challenge.
"You think you're so righteous?
You've taken your cut. You've played your own games. Don't act like you're above it all."
Ice Cube's expression didn't change, but his eyes flashed with anger. "We're not saints. But we're not liars, either. And we're done letting you drag our names through the mud to cover your tracks." The back and forth was relentless, words like weapons slicing through the smoky air. The wait staff had vanished, the lounge empty save for the three of them and the security team outside, tense and alert. And then, as if on cue, a sharp knock echoed against the heavy door. It swung open just a crack, and a young staffer slipped in, his eyes wide and face pale. "Sirs," he said nervously, there's footage circulating online. People are saying there's a video of this meeting. It's already gone viral."
The words hit the room like a lightning strike.
Ice Cube's head turned sharply, his expression unreadable. Kid Rock's eyes narrowed, a flash of cold fury in them. And Diddy just sat back in his seat, the color draining from his face.
"Who leaked it?" Kid Rock demanded, his voice tight.
The staffer shook his head.
"We don't know."
"It's all over Twitter, Instagram, everywhere.
People are already picking sides. A dark chuckle escaped Diddy's lips, but there was no humor in it.
Well, boys, he said, his voice flat, looks like the world's getting a front row seat.
Ice Cube's jaw tightened.
You always wanted to be the center of attention, Diddy. Looks like you got your wish.
The staffer slipped back out, the door closing with a soft click. Silence fell, but it was the kind of silence that hummed with the threat of a storm. Kid Rock's voice was cold. This was supposed to be between us. But now everyone's going to see the truth.
Diddy's gaze hardened, a glint of defiance in his eyes.
The truth? He asked softly.
The truth is a matter of perspective. You boys better be ready for what comes next. Ice Cube leaned back in his seat, his expression as cold and calm as ever. We've been ready for a long time.
Outside, the social media world was already in a frenzy. Hashtags were trending, theories were spreading like wildfire, and fans were lining up on either side of the rift. Videos leaked from hidden cameras, grainy but clear enough to show the tension, the accusations, the fury. Back inside the lounge, the three men sat in the eye of the storm they had unleashed. Kid Rock's voice broke the silence.
This doesn't end here, Diddy.
We're taking this public.
No more secrets.
Diddy met his gaze without flinching.
You think you're in control?
You think you can end this with a tweet and a video?
You're playing with fire, kid.
A muscle ticked in Ice Cube's jaw. Maybe. But it's time to let it all burn.
Let the truth be the only thing left standing. Diddy's mouth opened as if to respond, but then he closed it, swallowing whatever argument he might have made. His face was set, his eyes hard as steel. The escalation had begun. The dam had broken, and the flood of revelations was only just starting to pour out. Outside, fans picked their sides, media outlets scrambled to get the scoop, and the world watched with bated breath. Inside, three men sat in a room that suddenly felt too small for the truths they were unleashing. And as the seconds ticked by, one thing was clear. There was no going back. As the lounge door swung shut behind the staffer, the silence that settled over the room was a different kind of heavy. No longer a tension born of secrets, but an eerie calm that came from knowing the rest of the world was now part of their private war. Kid Rock cracked his knuckles slowly, his face a mask of cold fury. Ice Cube sat with his arms crossed, still and silent, eyes boring into Diddy's. And Diddy, he looked like a man caught in the middle of a hurricane of his own making, but one who refused to bow to the wind. For a few moments, no one spoke. The soft whir of the air conditioning and the faint hum of the city outside were the only sounds in the room. Then, Ice Cube leaned forward, breaking the silence with a quiet intensity. So now everyone knows, he said. All the whispers, all the backroom deals, they are out in the open.
Diddy's mouth twitched into a humorless smile.
You think this changes anything, he said, his voice low. You think the world cares? They'll move on to the next scandal by tomorrow.
Kid Rock's laugh was short and sharp. Maybe.
Or maybe they'll finally see you for what you are.
Diddy's eyes narrowed.
Careful, kid. You're not as clean as you think. Before Kid Rock could retort, Ice Cube spoke, his tone like steel. Save it, Diddy.
You've been talking in circles all night.
Let's see how you explain this next part. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, unlocking it with a flick of his thumb. He set it on the table, the screen lighting up to show a paused video. Diddy's eyes darted to the screen, his expression momentarily blank. Kid Rock leaned in, curiosity and wariness mingling in his eyes.
Play it, Kid Rock said.
Ice Cube's thumb pressed the screen, and the video sprang to life. It was grainy footage, the kind you'd expect from a hidden camera, but the audio was clear. A voice, Diddy's voice, filled the room. It was a conversation none of them had known had been recorded. I don't care what they think, Diddy's voice said in the video, raw and unguarded. They are just pawns. As long as I'm on top, the rest doesn't matter.
Kid Rock's head snapped up, his jaw tightening.
Ice Cube's face was a mask, his eyes locked on Diddy. The video continued, Diddy's voice outlining plans that cut deep. Talks of keeping certain artists in the shadows, of manipulating deals to keep the money flowing one way. It was damning, and it was real. When the video ended, the room was deathly quiet.
Diddy didn't speak, didn't try to deny what they'd just heard.
He simply stared at the phone, his expression unreadable.
Kid Rock broke the silence, his voice low and cold.
So that's it, huh? All those years, all those promises, it was all about keeping you at the top. Diddy finally looked up, his eyes hard. You think you know everything because of some video? You don't know the half of it.
Ice Cube's voice was quiet but firm. Then tell us. Tell us what we don't know.
For a moment, Diddy said nothing. Then he leaned back in his chair, his shoulders relaxing as if he'd decided there was no point in hiding anymore. You want the truth, he said, his voice almost calm.
Fine. Here it is.
He paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. I did what I had to do. The deals, the manipulation, it wasn't about ego. It was survival. You think this industry is fair? You think anyone gets to the top by playing by the rules?
He shook his head.
The game's rigged from the start. I just learned how to play it better than anyone else.
Kid Rock's eyes blazed. And what about us?
We were supposed to be in this together. Diddy's gaze flicked to him, then back to Ice Cube. You were, until you weren't. You both know how it goes. Loyalty lasts until the next big payday. I just made sure I stayed 2 steps ahead. Ice Cube's jaw tightened. At our expense.
Diddy didn't deny it.
At everyone's expense. But that's what it takes to stay on top. For a moment, the weight of those words filled the room. Then Kid Rock leaned back, his expression hard. You're not the only one who's been playing the game, Diddy. But you're the only one who forgot what it's supposed to be about. And that's when Ice Cube dropped the final bombshell. We're not just talking about betrayal anymore, he said, his voice calm. We're talking about promises you made, promises you broke.
Diddy's eyes narrowed.
What are you talking about? Ice Cube pulled another piece of paper from his jacket and laid it on the table. It was a contract, old, worn at the edges but clear enough to read.
You remember this? He asked quietly.
Diddy's eyes flicked to the paper, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. You promised me and Kid would have creative control, Ice Cube said. You promised us a seat at the table. Instead, you used our names to make your deals and shut us out when the money started rolling in. Diddy said nothing, but his silence spoke volumes.
Kid Rock's voice was cold.
You broke that promise, Diddy.
And now the world's gonna know.
The three of them sat there, the weight of years of betrayal and broken trust pressing down on them. Outside, the storm of social media and fan speculation raged on. But in that room, it was just 3 men and the truth laid bare between them. Diddy leaned back, a tired smile flickering across his lips. You boys think this is over, he said quietly. This is just the start. Ice Cube's expression was unreadable. Maybe, but it's the start of the end for you. And with that, the unexpected twist, the revelation of Diddy's true manipulations and the evidence Ice Cube and Kid Rock had gathered, shifted the balance once and for all.
The war was no longer just between them.
Now, it was out in the world, and there was no stopping it. The world outside the velvet-curtained lounge had caught fire overnight. News outlets scrambled to keep up with the flood of speculation, while social media feeds were an endless stream of hashtags, reaction videos, and endless debates. Kid Rock and Ice Cube's names trended alongside Diddy's, the three locked in a digital tug-of-war for the hearts and minds of the fans. Every hour brought a new wave of headlines, some supportive, some skeptical, and all breathless with the drama of it all. Inside the lounge, the 3 men sat in a quiet that was almost eerie compared to the chaos beyond. Kid Rock scrolled through his phone, his thumb flicking past tweets and Instagram posts that dissected every word, every gesture of the confrontation. Ice Cube sat with his arms crossed, his expression one of quiet resolve. Diddy, meanwhile, was hunched over his phone, tapping out messages furiously as he worked to salvage what he could of his carefully cultivated image. Damage control, Diddy muttered under his breath, as if the words alone could contain the wildfire that was already beyond his grasp. His phone buzzed with incoming calls and notifications, each one another fire to put out. Kid Rock looked up from his own phone, his lip curling in a wry smile. Not so easy to spin the narrative now, is it?
Diddy shot him a look, his eyes flashing.
You think this is a joke? You think this is just about a few tweets and hashtags? This could ruin everything. Ice Cube's voice was calm but carried an edge that cut through the room. Maybe it should. Diddy slammed his phone down on the table, the sound sharp in the heavy air. You're so sure you're in the right, he said, his voice tight. But you've been in this game long enough to know how quickly the crowd turns. Today they are cheering for you. Tomorrow, they'll be calling you out, too.
Kid Rock's eyes narrowed.
At least we're not the ones who started the lies.
Diddy took a deep breath, his jaw clenching. I didn't start the lies, he said quietly.
I just stopped correcting them when it was easier to let people believe what they wanted.
Ice Cube's gaze was unwavering.
And that's the difference between surviving and selling out.
You made your choice.
Outside, Diddy's PR team was already working overtime. Press releases were being drafted, carefully worded statements that tried to paint the confrontation as a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Carefully selected photos of Diddy smiling with fans or shaking hands with industry leaders began to flood his social media, an attempt to drown out the videos and posts that showed a very different side of him. But it wasn't enough. Kid Rock leaned back in his seat, his phone lighting up with a new notification. "Looks like you're trending worldwide, Diddy," he said, his voice low. "People aren't buying the act anymore." Diddy's shoulders tensed, but he said nothing. He knew it, too. Meanwhile, Ice Cube took a different approach. He opened Instagram and started a live video, his calm demeanor and quiet voice a stark contrast to the chaos. "This isn't about taking sides," he told his followers.
"This is about the truth.
It's about standing up when someone tries to play you like a pawn." His words carried the weight of experience, of a man who had seen the worst of the business and refused to bow to it. The comments rolled in by the thousands, most of them supportive. Some skeptical, some dismissive, but the tide of public opinion was turning. For every carefully crafted PR statement from Diddy's team, there were a dozen fans reposting the videos, dissecting the lies, and demanding answers. Kid Rock, too, made his voice heard. His tweet was short and to the point: "No more lies, no more games." It was a declaration, a line in the sand that resonated far beyond the music industry. Diddy's phone buzzed again, and he glanced at it with a scowl. "They are calling for interviews," he said, his voice tight. "Everyone wants my side of the story." Ice Cube looked at him, his expression calm. "Then give it to them. But this time, tell the truth."
Diddy didn't respond.
Instead, he stood, pacing the length of the room as if the act of moving could somehow keep the walls from closing in. His mind raced with strategies, with ways to spin the story and salvage what was left of his brand. But for the first time, he looked unsure, like a man who realized that no amount of carefully chosen words could change what had already been said. Kid Rock watched him with a mixture of contempt and pity. "You always thought you were the puppet master, Diddy, but the strings you pulled wrapped around your own neck." Diddy turned to face him, his mouth opening as if to fire back, but then he closed it, the words dying on his lips. There was nothing left to say that would change what had been laid bare. Outside, the fans and the media kept the fire burning. Rumors spread of a truce in the works, of hush-hush meetings between teams trying to find a way to end the feud without anyone losing face. But inside the lounge, the truth was plain. There would be no neat ending to this story. No matter how hard Diddy's team tried to paint over the cracks, the world had seen too much. Ice Cube stood, his calm presence somehow more commanding than any outburst could have been. "This doesn't end with a tweet or press release," he said quietly. "This ends when you stop lying. When you stop pretending you're the only one who matters." Diddy looked at him, his shoulders sagging just a little. "And if I don't?" Kid Rock's voice was flat and final. "Then we'll make sure everyone sees what you really are." The damage was done. The game had changed. And for the first time in a long time, Diddy looked like he knew it. The next day dawned in a world transformed. What had started as a heated confrontation behind closed doors had spilled into the public eye, and there was no putting the genie back in the bottle. News anchors on morning shows spoke in hushed, excited tones about the explosive showdown between Kid Rock, Ice Cube, and Diddy. Talk show hosts devoted entire segments to dissecting every detail, every rumor, every half-whispered story. On social media, hashtags blazed like wildfire. #No more lies, #Kid Rock vs Diddy, #Ice Cube speaks. Fans, industry insiders, and curious onlookers flooded every platform with theories, memes, and takes, some savage, some sympathetic, but all captivated by the drama. In the middle of the storm, Kid Rock sat in a quiet hotel suite, scrolling through the endless flood of notifications. Each one was another confirmation that the truth couldn't be buried anymore. His phone pinged with messages of support and offers for interviews, but he ignored them for the moment. This wasn't about the spotlight. It was about something bigger. Across the city, Ice Cube was calm, resolute. He sat with his team, phones buzzing and screens filled with headlines. "We knew this would happen," he said, his voice even. "Now we stay steady. Let the truth do the talking." His manager nodded. "The narrative's already turning. People see you as the one who stood up, who didn't back down.
We can build on that.
Ice Cube's gaze didn't waver. We're not building anything on lies. No matter how this plays out, we don't backtrack. Meanwhile, Diddy's world was spinning faster than he could control. In his penthouse, he watched as news alerts piled up on his phone, each one a fresh wound to his carefully curated image. His team was in overdrive, strategizing, spinning, reaching out to every outlet that would listen. "We've got to get ahead of this," his head of PR said, her tone urgent. "A sit-down interview, something to show your side." Diddy shook his head, his face drawn.
"They won't care.
They've already decided."
The head of PR frowned. "Then give them something else to talk about."
"A new project, a big reveal, anything to change the narrative."
But Diddy knew it wouldn't be enough. This was different.
This wasn't just a PR crisis, it was a reckoning.
Fans were split down the middle.
Some flooded Diddy's social media with angry comments. "How could you do this to the people who made you?" Others rushed to his defense. "This is just how the business works. Everyone plays the game."
But the tide was shifting.
For every defender, there were a dozen calling him out. Kid Rock posted another short video that morning, his voice tired but resolute. "We didn't come here to tear anyone down," he said. "We came here to stop the lies. To stand up for the truth." It was simple, direct, and it landed like a hammer blow. Ice Cube was even more measured. In a brief statement released through his team, he said, "This isn't about drama, it's about respect. When someone breaks that, it's up to us to speak out." The reactions were immediate. Fans who had grown up on Cube's music shared his words across platforms, calling him a real one, someone who didn't bend even when the heat was on. Kid Rock's followers, too, rallied around him, their comments echoing the same sentiment. Enough was enough.
But Diddy stayed silent.
His last post, an artfully staged photo of him in a luxury studio, captioned "Greatness in the Making," was flooded with comments. But this time, the usual praise was drowned out by demands for answers. "Where's the truth, Diddy? Talk to us like men, not like a brand. We're watching." Every hour brought another hit to his reputation, and every hour he waited, the damage only deepened. Rumors swirled of a secret meeting where he would address everything, a televised sit-down, an exclusive interview. But no one had seen him in public since the videos had surfaced. Back in the hotel suite, Kid Rock and Ice Cube were still strategizing. They knew the power of the moment, and the risk of it slipping away. "People are hungry for the real story," Kid Rock said, his voice quiet. "They want to hear it straight from us." Ice Cube nodded. "Then that's what they'll get." By midday, they had agreed, no more cryptic posts, no more half answers. They would speak directly to the fans, together. They reached out to a trusted journalist known for cutting through the noise, someone who wouldn't pull punches or let them hide behind slogans. The interview was set for the following evening, broadcast live and unedited. As word of the upcoming interview spread, the anticipation only grew. Headlines screamed about the unfiltered truth that was about to drop. Fans set reminders, hashtags trended even higher, and everyone wondered, would Diddy show up, or would he keep hiding behind carefully worded statements?
The hours crawled by.
In the meantime, Ice Cube's team put out another statement, short, direct, and impossible to ignore. "This is bigger than music.
It's about respect. About honesty.
And tomorrow, you'll hear everything."
For Diddy, the walls were closing in.
His team worked the phones, trying to lock down the narrative, but it was like trying to catch smoke in their hands. Every move they made was met with more questions, more scrutiny. In private, Diddy's face was pale and drawn, his eyes hollow. "Are you going to face them?" his manager asked, her voice hesitant. Diddy didn't answer right away. His mind was racing, images of the past 2 decades flashing behind his eyes. The deals, the parties, the late nights and early mornings spent chasing the next big thing.
He had always known how to stay one step ahead. But now, for the first time, he wasn't sure there was a next step. Outside, the world waited. The public fallout was no longer just a story, it was a reckoning. And tomorrow, when Kid Rock and Ice Cube sat down to speak, everyone would be listening. The day of the interview dawned gray and overcast, as if the sky itself understood the weight of what was about to happen. In the hours leading up to it, the world seemed to hold its breath. Social media feeds were saturated with speculation and anticipation. Hashtags like #TheTruthTonight and #KidRockIceCube blazed across trending lists worldwide. For fans,
For industry insiders, for everyone who had watched this story unfold, the wait was almost over. Inside the studio where the live interview would be broadcast, the atmosphere was taut with quiet intensity. The set was simple, no flashing lights, no glitzy backdrops, just 3 chairs arranged in a triangle and a single camera ready to roll. Kid Rock and Ice Cube arrived early, their demeanor calm but their eyes sharp. They shared a brief handshake, an unspoken pact between them. Whatever happened tonight, they were in it together. The interviewer, a veteran journalist known for pulling no punches, greeted them with a nod. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice low. Ice Cube's answer was calm, unwavering. "It's time." As the broadcast went live, the world watched. Millions tuned in, phones in hand, timelines open and ready to react. The camera panned slowly from the interviewer to the 2 men who had decided to lay it all on the table. "Let's start from the beginning," the interviewer said. "Why tonight? Why now?" Kid Rock leaned forward, his voice steady. "Because the games have gone on long enough. We're here to put it all out there. No more half-truths, no more spin." Ice Cube nodded. "People deserve to know what's really been happening. Not just the headlines or the rumors, the real story." And they told it. For an hour, they spoke of broken promises and shifting loyalties, of deals that had started in good faith and ended in betrayal. They talked about Diddy's manipulation, about how he'd turned them against each other while he built an empire on their backs. They spoke calmly, but with a quiet fury that resonated beyond the screen. The interviewer didn't let them off easy. "Some say this is just business as usual in the music world," he pressed. "Why make it public now?" Ice Cube's voice was like steel. "Because there's a line. And Diddy crossed it. When you take from your own people, when you use them like stepping stones, that's not business. That's betrayal." Kid Rock added, his tone resolute. "We're not here to settle scores. We're here because we know that if we stay silent, we're just as guilty." The conversation shifted, digging deeper into the timeline of the alleged lies, the shady contracts, the money that had vanished without explanation. Ice Cube laid out the facts methodically, like an architect rebuilding a house that had been left to rot. Kid Rock brought the fire, his blunt words cutting through the noise. Across social media, the reactions came fast and furious. Clips of their calm, measured takedown of Diddy's empire were shared in real time, fans reposting every revelation with captions like "finally" and "no more lies." But the one voice missing from the conversation was Diddy's. As the interview played out, his team issued a carefully worded statement. "Mr. Combs will not be addressing these allegations at this time. We are reviewing our options." It was a corporate line, cold and distant, and it only fanned the flames of speculation. After the broadcast ended, the 2 men sat in the quiet of the studio, the weight of what they had done settling around them like dust. Kid Rock let out a breath, his shoulders relaxing for the first time in days. "Feels good to get it out there," he said quietly. Ice Cube nodded. "The truth always does." The next morning, headlines screamed with the fallout. Kid Rock and Ice Cube dropped the hammer on Diddy. The music mogul's empire under siege. Opinion pieces poured in, dissecting every word of the interview, while fans flooded Diddy's socials with demands for answers he still wasn't giving. For Kid Rock and Ice Cube, the aftermath was a mixture of relief and uncertainty. They had done what they set out to do, spoken the truth, but what came next was out of their hands. They both knew the music world had a short memory, that today's scandal was tomorrow's afterthought. But they also knew that something fundamental had shifted. The silence that had protected Diddy for so long was gone. In the days that followed, Diddy's world began to show cracks. Business partners distanced themselves, wary of the fallout. Rumors of sponsorships and endorsements quietly pulling away leaked out, small signs that the tide was turning. And while Diddy remained mostly out of sight, his brand, once untouchable, was now something people spoke of in whispers. Kid Rock and Ice Cube, meanwhile, stood firm. They didn't gloat or throw parties to celebrate. There was no victory dance, just a quiet resolve to keep moving forward. They knew this wasn't the end of their fight. But it was a start. Fans, too, were changed. In forums and comment sections, they talked not just about the scandal, but about what it meant. About how power and money could twist even the closest relationships. About how the truth, even when it was painful, was always worth hearing. One fan summed it up in a viral post. "This isn't just about music. It's about respect. And I'm here for it." In the quiet after the storm, Kid Rock and Ice Cube met one last time before parting ways. No cameras, no fans, just two men who had seen too much and refused to stay quiet. You think he'll ever tell the real story?
Kid Rock asked, his voice low. Ice Cube's expression was calm. Doesn't matter. We already did. The world would keep turning. New headlines would come, new scandals to chase. But for them, the chapter was closed. The final words were written not by Diddy or any PR team, but by the men who decided enough was enough. And in the end, that was the only truth that mattered.